Not to be confused with Kern Valley State Prison, North Kern State Prison would first open its doors in 1993 and today is home to over 3,100 medium security inmates. Back on November 10th, 2024 at around 7:38 p.m., officers would observe three incarcerated persons, Jose Gonzalez, Eric Servin, and Alfred Rodriguez, allegedly attacking a fellow inmate, Nick V. Lopez, inside of a recreation yard. And although officers were immediately able to quell the incident by using pepper spray and initiated life-saving measures on inmate Lopez, he was pronounced deceased at 8:51 p.m.
Now to a story you'll only see on CBS 2. We're learning more about a North Hollywood mother and grandmother who was stabbed to death inside her home. There's a growing memorial near Tanya Manaka's home. Police say they found a trail of blood leading to the bedroom early Saturday morning and later found the 48-year-old dead in the closet. 3 of her grandchildren were also home, but luckily they weren't hurt, and police say they didn't realize what had happened. Nathan Fritzen says his sister was married recently, and his new brother-in-law has been arrested for her murder.
She worked hard, and she did very little for herself. She always put everyone around her first. You couldn't have had a better big sister. I couldn't have asked for more.
Manaka's husband was found on the 210 freeway, passed out and covered in blood. He was arrested by Azusa police. Meanwhile, Manaka's family has set up a GoFundMe page to help with funeral.
The murdered North Hollywood mother is speaking out. KCAL9's Jeff Nguyen is live tonight in North Hollywood with the very latest on the investigation and reaction from the victim's brother. Jeff?
Susie and Chris, the murder happened inside this home where you see a collection of candles and balloons, and the victim lived there with her grandchildren who also happened to be inside during that deadly stabbing. Tonight, a memorial grows outside the North Hollywood home of Tanya Manaka.
Our family really lost someone important.
The 48-year-old was violently stabbed to death early Saturday morning. Her brother, Nathan Fritzen, lives in Colorado. He says his sister got married recently, and his new brother-in-law has been arrested for her murder.
I didn't know about him. She hadn't introduced me to him or told me about him.
Police say they found a trail of blood leading to the bedroom after they were called to the house. Once there, officers found Manaka dead in the closet. Making matters worse, 3 children were inside the home. The kids were not harmed and unaware of what happened. Fritzen says his sister lived there with 2 of her adult daughters and 3 of her grandkids.
Most of her time was spent at home with her family, taking care of her kids and grandkids.
Manaka has 3 adult daughters and 4 grandkids. A GoFundMe campaign has been set up to help with her funeral expenses.
Her kids and her grandkids are really could use a hand right now.
Fritzen says he and his older sister grew up in a rough part of North Hollywood. She had worked at an accounting office in the valley to support 5 members of her family, which is why he loves this childhood picture of his big sister reaching down to pull him up.
You couldn't have had a better big sister. I couldn't have asked for more.
And at this point, police are not releasing the suspect's name, and the motive is being investigated. We are live in North Hollywood.
Who is fighting who? Americans of Mexican heritage are fighting each other, and embarrassed community leaders have been unable to stop it. What's more, it is spreading in California and the Southwest. Warring gangs like the ones we found in East Los Angeles.
I got shot through this side, and it came out through this side, and it messed up my bone and my veins. I can't even walk the streets now because if you're gonna walk the streets, you're gonna carry something with you. I don't think, that I'll live to see 23.
You gotta fight for your barrio. Sometimes you gotta kill for your barrio just to keep up your reputation.
Barrio means neighborhood, and it is for this, the reputation of the neighborhood, that they are ready to kill and willing to die. Gang members bear permanent insignias. Tattoos proclaiming where they're from and what they stand for. As nations carry flags, gangs paint their names on walls. Lotte, Little Valley. You know gangs are feuding when their names get crossed out.
Usually it starts by, crossing out, maybe a fist fight, and then maybe guys will get knifed behind it, and then shooting, and then someone dies and, they might want to get back at us. If they do get back at us, we go down and might kill 2 of them. Then they'll come back and maybe get 1 of us, and we'll go back and get 2 or 3 more. And it just goes on and on. Don't stop.
2 enemies who've been going on and on for generations are El Lojo Moravia and Garrity Loma.
That says our barrio, and that says where we stand between all the barrios. That's the name of our barrio, and that's what number we are between all the barrios. We're number 1 from all the barrios. Barrios do things to us, but we always come out on top. Like, we get 4 or 5 guys for every one that they get of us. And we get them Mercer, Either we put them in the ground or, we make them remember that not to come up here. They think twice before coming up here. And this is where we are with a shotgun, always ready.
It's claimed to be numero uno, embroils Garrity in feuds with many gangs. And just as their enemies do, they show off their scars the way war veterans display Purple Hearts.
Yeah, I got shot in the heart. And these are other scars that I've had from other neighborhood fightings and a lot of stuff that I've been through.
They don't use their real names, but street names. That's Samson, Smiley, Mousy, and Happy.
I got a 32 automatic carry with me all the time and just take care of myself because you never know when some car's going to come up and just shoot you on sight.
Only a few blocks away is Arco, and one of its leaders is Babe.
How did the feud with Garrity begin?
Oh, this is way back in my father's times. My father was a member from Eloyo, 2 years from the cut downs from Eloyo. Back in his days, they were fighting with Garrity.
Why?
I tell you the truth, I really don't know why, but, the feud is still going.
No one, old or young, could tell us how the feud began. But it keeps going because the Chicanos stay segregated. And here, the macho ethic is blood real. The slightest insult demands revenge.
We fight for what we know. We fight for our dirt. This is our dirt. This is where we were born and raised, grew up with each other. We went from kindergarten all the way up to high schools and everything together. And, somebody gets, you lose a homeboy, it hurts you.
Is it like losing a piece of yourself?
Yeah, it's like losing a part of you. Like losing a finger or a leg or an arm or an eye.
Certainly no one wants to be overly dramatic about it or glorify it, but to be a gang member is to be a soldier in a guerrilla war. For those who fight it, a war no less dangerous and bloody than World War II or Vietnam. There is no one enemy, but several. And these enemies are not in some distant land or faraway stronghold. They're across the street, down the road, up the hill, around the corner, all around. There are a few pitched battles, ritualized combat with large forces in darkened schoolyards and parks, but mostly it is nighttime bushwhacking and ambushing. The enemy streaking by in cars, guns blazing, are taking careful aim from some secure vantage point, are leaping from hiding places with knives, boards, and chains. Gang veterans have long prison records. As youngsters, it's usually for fighting and petty thefts. As they get older, it's attempted murder and grand larceny. And more, the crimes are committed not for the gang's honor, but for organized crime and for personal profit. In jails, steel bars don't stop gang warfare. Outside, steel plates offer some protection to the Lagunas family. All 8 sons are in the Elojo gang, and their home is a favored target. That 1/4-inch steel plate?
Yeah.
That stops the bullet.
They don't even make a dent or scratch on them.
They just bounce off like flies.
But steel didn't prevent Peter from being blinded when he was 13.
They just came to the driveway, the parking lot, and they just started shooting.
Blindness has neither stopped Peter from fighting nor being arrested. He still likes to use a knife. Peter says he slashes wildly at whomever is nearby. Police say his buddies hold the target, so he can't miss. What makes Peter different is that he uses only a knife. Most others prefer guns.
Careful, babe. They're not loaded, I hope.
In East Los Angeles, where gang wars flare the most, police picked up 108 handguns, shotguns, and rifles during the first 9 months of this year. Many gang incidents go unreported. Innocent victims fear retaliation. Gang members seek their own revenge.
You know who shot you? Who is it?
Don't they? The gangs usually like to take credit for their shootings, and they'll often yell out the gang name and even the shooter's nickname. But we have trouble on the prosecution end. When we get to court, they just refuse.
There are an estimated 100 gangs and 22,000 gang members in Los Angeles. Last year, there were at least 168 gang-related homicides.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel today. Really quick, before we jump into it here, I just want to give a big shout out. If you are new to the channel, welcome. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video. If you do like it, I encourage you to go back, watch some of the content, watch some of our videos, and kind of, comment down below. Let me know what you think. And if you are someone who has continued to support the channel, if you're a returning viewer, and you already know how much I appreciate you, thank you guys so much. We just hit 18,000 subscribers. I woke up to it. So it happened last night, this morning, and very, very excited. If you've been following my channel at all, then you already know 20,000 has been the big goal for 2025. And I feel like we're going to be hitting that sometime in June, if I'm being honest. Maybe we can do it this month, but probably not. Probably going to be in June. So again, just big shout out to all of you who have continued to support the channel and watch my videos. Okay, so jumping right into it here, we're going to be going back to November of 2024, in particular an article from the CDCR's website, November 12th of 2024, and this is 2 days after the said attack. If you follow my channel at all or other ones, you absolutely know that the California State Prison system is, I'll just say it's a joke. Sometimes I get comments saying I'm blaming the government or the administration, and I'm not. I am in the sense of they've chosen how they want to run things. And this was some years back with Governor Gavin Newsom, Jeff McCumber, head of the CDCR, and other admins. And I've said it. If you have a loved one who is not only an inmate, if you have a loved one who's an inmate, obviously they're in danger. Sometimes I think that goes without saying. But if you have a loved one who works within the prison, if you have a loved one who's a corrections officer, a nurse, just a normal staff member who goes to work every day just trying to earn a paycheck, they are in danger. It's no joke. It's not for dramatic effect for the channel. It's true. It has become borderline free-for-all. And don't take my word for it. Look at the statistics. Right now in 2025, they are on track to double their murder rate from 2024. It's not good. But anyway. Okay, so November 12th, 2024 article within the CDCR. This is out of North Kern State Prison. California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation officials are investigating the November 10th, 2024 death of an incarcerated person at NKSP as a homicide. At 7:38 p.m., officers observed 3 incarcerated persons, Jose Gonzalez, Servin and Alfredo Rodriguez, allegedly attacking inmate Nick V. Lopez in a recreation yard. Officers immediately quelled the incident using pepper spray. They initiated life-saving measures and activated 911. Emergency medical personnel arrived on the scene and continued administering life-saving measures. Paramedics pronounced Lopez deceased at 8:51 p.m. No other injuries were reported. Gonzalez, Servin, and Rodriguez have been placed in restricted housing as NKSP's Investigative Services Unit continues its investigation. The Office of the Inspector General has been notified, and the Kern County coroner will determine Lopez's cause of death. 3 weapons manufactured by incarcerated persons were found at the scene. So kind of goes without saying, we already know the cause of death. He had 3 alleged attackers, and he found 3 alleged weapons made by incarcerated individuals. Lopez, the victim in this case, 55 years old, was most recently received from Los Angeles County on November 8th, 2022, sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for first-degree murder as a third striker, with enhancements for prior felony convictions of a serious offense. I got really good background information on him. You saw his news clips about who his wife at the time, who he murdered. That made a lot of headlines. That was a brutal murder that he committed. I was able to find an appeal that he filed with facts in the case, and honestly, it was one of the tougher ones I've ever read. We'll get into that in just a minute. Gonzalez, and that is Jose Gonzalez, 48 years old, was most recently sentenced by Los Angeles County on November 30th, 2006 to life without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. While incarcerated, he was also sentenced by Kern County on August 19th, 2024 to 12 years for assault by an incarcerated person with a deadly weapon as a second striker with an enhancement for inflicting great bodily injury. So he tried to murder somebody while behind bars is basically what that means. Eric Servin, 37, was most recently received from L.A. County on November 20th, 2018, sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for second-degree murder. While incarcerated, he was sentenced by L.A. County on November 5th, 2018, to 2 years for a possession/manufacture charge of a deadly weapon by an incarcerated person, and sentenced by Kern County on June 2nd, 2022, to 4 years for assault by an incarcerated person with a deadly weapon or force likely to cause great bodily injury as a second striker. Lastly, Alfred Rodriguez, 37 years old, was received from San Bernardino County on September 16th, 2008, sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for second-degree murder. Now, really quick, before we go any further, I got good information on Gonzalez. I got one of his appeals as well. He was a Sureno gang member. He was a member of the Lot Stoners Vadio 13, an East LA gang. They beefed a lot with the Lopez Maravilla gang, also a long-running East LA gang. I got really good information on that. And I got a little bit on Servin. I was not able to find a lot on the last guy, Alfred Rodriguez. Just going, like I've said, I run into trouble sometimes when you go back to the early 2000s. Sometimes you just have trouble finding court paperwork or articles. But I still feel like I got you guys really, really good information. All right, we're going to get right into it here with our victim, Nick V. Lopez, his background. This was an appeal that he filed actually just a few months before his death on May 30th, 2024. I'm going to read you what he was actually convicted of, who he was convicted of murdering, and then we're going to get into the factual background of the case. Some of this stuff I cannot say on YouTube. It was a brutal killing of his then wife. So we're going to just jump right into it here. A jury convicted defendant and appellant Nick Vidal Lopez of first-degree murder, statute penal code 187, for killing his wife, Tanya Manaka, by stabbing her 32 times after a separate trial on prior convictions and sentencing factors in aggravation. So those are mitigating factors. That is basically how violent, how vicious it was. Was there any premeditation to it? All of that definitely affected Nick Vidal Lopez's sentence. This guy almost got put to death. We'll keep reading. The court sentenced Lopez to 85 years to life in prison. Lopez represented himself for almost all proceedings in the guilt phase of the trial, and now he contends the trial court erred by allowing him to do so despite doubts as to his competency. So basically what he's doing is he's in the penalty phase, and he's saying, hey, courts, these appeal courts, these courts that were trying me, they shouldn't have let me represent myself. They shouldn't have let me be my own lawyer. I'm not mentally all there. They should have realized that, and I shouldn't have been able to represent myself, which is crazy when you think about it. But yes, that's what he's arguing. In addition, Lopez argues the trial court erred by failing to instruct the jury on the lesser included offenses of voluntary manslaughter by instructing the jury incorrectly regarding factors in aggravation, and by failing to determine his ability to pay before imposing fines, which I think is just ridiculous, but fees and assemblance. In addition, Lopez contends the prosecutor committed misconduct in a question she asked during some of the arguments, some of the back and forth. We affirm as we explain below. It's crazy though when you read this stuff, because it's like, wow, you got a guy arguing about his fines, but it all goes into, am I going to be put to death or not? Am I going to have an appeal? Maybe I can get a reduction in sentence? Basically what he's trying to do, he's trying to get something like on a technicality. He knows he's not going to get completely off, but maybe he can get something on a technicality. Okay, and these are the facts of the case. In January 2019, Lopez moved into a home in North Hollywood where Tanya Manaka lived with two adult daughters from a prior relationship, Selena and Ariana. I put that picture up. You can see with her daughters. And Selena's 3 young children. Lopez and Manaka shared the master bedroom upstairs. Ariana slept in another bedroom down the hall, and Selena and her children shared a third bedroom. Selena testified that she did not know Lopez well, but that after he moved into the house, he and Manaka spent almost all their time together. So you got to feel how weird that would be. You got your mom, you got your kids, you got your sister. They loved their mom. You see her brother, how her brother talked about her. He's choking up, he's crying on the news interview. It didn't sound like she had the best luck with men. And she moves in this boyfriend who they really don't know. But, it's her house and she can move in whoever she wants. Selena believed Lopez had some kind of control over Menchaca, and for that reason, Selena preferred not to speak with Lopez. At around 10 p.m. on the evening of February 22nd, 2019, Selena knocked on the door of her mother's bedroom, and her mother answered. Selena saw Lopez sitting at the edge of the bed, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Selena said that she had put her children to bed and that she was heading out and would be back home later. Menchaca told her to have a good night. Ariana was not at home that night. So basically, you've got Tanya and Nick Lopez alone in Tanya's bedroom. So when Selena left, Lopez and Menchaca were the only adults remaining in the house. And you have Selena's 3 children who were sleeping. Records recovered from Lopez's phone showed that Lopez attempted to call his son at around 1:42 a.m. the following morning, and again a minute later at 1:43 a.m. So this is Nick Lopez. He's attempting to call his son. But his son apparently didn't answer, probably because it's 1:40 in the morning. Surveillance footage from an apartment building next door captured a figure getting into Tanya Menchaca's silver Honda Civic and leaving the driveway of the home at 1:44 a.m., but showed no one else entering or leaving the house at around this time. Lopez made 3 more unsuccessful calls to his son between 1:46 and 1:47 a.m. and again 4 minutes later at 1:51 a.m. Lopez called 911 from Menchaca's cell phone and told the dispatcher that someone had been stabbed at the address of the house where he lived with Menchaca. Within 5 minutes of the 911 call, first responders from the fire department and LA Police Department arrived on the scene. Police officers found the security gate of the building open and the front door unlocked. They saw no signs of forced entry. When the officers entered, they saw a substantial amount of blood in the kitchen and on the stairway leading upstairs. Officers entered Lopez and Menchaca's bedroom and discovered Menchaca's nude body upside down in a closet covered in blood. They found Selena's 3 children still in bed and escorted them out of the house. Paramedics attempted to render aid, but they almost immediately declared Menchaca dead. Officers investigating the crime scene found the blade of an 8-inch butcher knife that had been broken off its handle in the closet where Menchaca's body was discovered, along with a bent knife underneath Menchaca's body and 2 more knives in the sink in the adjoining bathroom. On the kitchen counter downstairs, they found 2 knife blocks, one with no knives in it, the other with a few knives missing. A police officer called Selena the night of the murder to tell her that something had happened at her home. She returned home to find yellow crime scene tape surrounding the house. Officers told Selena to go to the police station where she was reunited with her 3 children and learned that her mother was dead. She told the detective that her mother's car was missing and that Lopez had likely gone to Las Vegas, where his adult son lived. At around 8:30 a.m. the following morning, an off-duty sheriff's deputy saw Lopez walking on an on-ramp of the 210 freeway in Azusa, which is in the direction one would head from the crime scene towards Las Vegas, with blood covering his hands and his clothing. The deputy made a U-turn to approach Lopez and tried to get his attention, but Lopez ran away. The deputy called 911. A California Highway Patrol officer responded to the call and found Menchaca's vehicle parked nearby on the shoulder of the freeway, apparently abandoned. The CHP officer exited the freeway and encountered Lopez walking on the street with blood covering his clothes and hands. The officer asked Lopez what happened, and he said he had been jumped. The officer asked him if he knew where he was, and he said no. The officer notified dispatch, and additional law enforcement personnel and paramedics arrived on the scene. Paramedics addressed Lopez but did not find any injuries apart from some cuts on his hands. Azusa police officers placed Lopez in handcuffs and accompanied him to a hospital. The CHP officer returned to the abandoned vehicle and discovered a large amount of blood on the driver's side door and near the trunk. The officer ran the license plate and found it was registered to Tanya Manaka. An autopsy showed Menchaca suffered 32 stab wounds, including 30 on her back and 2 on her sides. 2 of the wounds were fatal and 6 more were potentially fatal. The nature of the several of the wounds suggested they had been caused by a kitchen knife. Menchaca had also suffered a blunt force injury to her head, consistent with being slammed down on the ground or against a bed frame. The medical examiner who conducted the autopsy also found an abrasion on Menchaca's finger and a cut on her hand, both of which were consistent with defensive wounds. So basically trying to get Nick Lopez off her and prevent the stabbing. Criminalists tested the blood recovered from the knives they found in the bedroom and determined it contained DNA from both Tanya Menchaca and Nick Lopez. They also conducted DNA tests on fingernail clippings from Tanya Menchaca's right hand, which showed DNA for both Lopez and Menchaca. This suggested that Tanya Manaka was fighting back and clawed Lopez in self-defense. There's other things that he did to her that we can't talk about on here. Let you guys think about that. But he brutalized her is what he did in every way imaginable. And yeah, very, very sad. An LAPD detective concluded Menchaca had been killed in a multi-phase attack in which her attacker first struck her in the bedroom, then went to the kitchen to retrieve additional knives, leaving a trail of blood up and down the stairs as he went. The attacker then returned to the bedroom and stabbed Menchaca again. Menchaca either went into the closet trying to flee her attacker, or the attacker moved her there, and that's where she ended up being discovered. But there are the statement of facts, and that was a hard read. I didn't like reading that one. Very sad what happened to Tanya Manaka. And they ended up raising a ton of money for her family. The GoFundMe was really out in the news. She was really beloved by a lot of people. And just sad all the way around. I hate reading that stuff, to be honest with you. I can read other things all day long, but stuff like that, it just gets me a little bit. Okay, so on to one of Nick Lopez's attackers, and this is Jose Gonzalez. This was an appeal filed way back and decided on in June of 2006. He's a Sureno gang member, and this is about a case that happened actually in the 90s. And we're going to be reading what he was convicted of and go from there. He was also almost sentenced to death. A jury convicted defendant Jose Gonzalez of the first-degree murder of Jose Albert Rodriguez and Hector Ricardo Gonzalez Martinez, and of being a felon in possession of a firearm. It found true the special circumstance of multiple murder and that defendant personally used a firearm in the commission of the murders. The jury was then able to reach a penalty verdict so penalty is like death or life in prison, so they couldn't agree. After a penalty retrial, a second jury returned a verdict of death. The court denied the automatic motion to modify the verdict and sentenced defendant to death. So for a while, Jose Gonzalez was on death row. This appeal is automatic. We affirm defendant's convictions and the special circumstance findings, but reverse the death sentence. So this is one of the only appeals I've read where it works. So they affirm his convictions of multiple murders, everything else, possession of a firearm, but they reverse the death penalty, which is huge. It's just huge. You get to live. You don't have a potential date where the state of California is going to put you to death. These are the facts surrounding Jose Gonzalez's case. During the evening of June 17th, 1996, 7 men, Jose Gutierrez, Juan Pablo Rocha, brothers Mario, Juan, and Horacio Jimenez, and victims, Jose Albert Rodriguez and Hector Ricardo Gonzalez Martinez, were working on a car in the driveway of the Jimenez brothers' house at 835 North Cordova Avenue in an area of East LA that the Lopez Maravilla Street Gang claimed as its home turf. Now, really quick, Lopez Maravilla Street Gang. A little background. The Lopez Maravilla Gang is a subset of the broader Maravilla gangs, which are Mexican-American gangs primarily based in East Los Angeles. The Maravilla gangs are known for resisting the authority of the Mexican mafia. The Lopez Maravilla Gang, along with other Maravilla groups like El Hoyo Maravilla, Arizona Maravilla, and Ford Maravilla, are named after specific gangs or specific streets or areas within Maravilla. These gangs were once united in their opposition to La M, leading to La M placing a green light on them, which meant that members of other La M-aligned gangs were encouraged to assault them. Just a little background information. Not going too crazy into it, but just a little bit. All right? Okay. Lopez Maravilla Street Gang claimed as its home turf. So these 7 guys, brothers, friends, gang members, they're all hanging out. This is their home turf. At some point, a man identified as Jose Gonzalez fired 2 shots from a rifle towards the men, hitting Rodriguez and Martinez, which is kind of crazy. So both shots hit their intended targets. Both Rodriguez and Martinez died of single gunshot wounds to the body, which is rare. If you actually look up statistics on people that get shot one time, survival rate is pretty high. So for Jose Gonzalez, 2 shots for 2 separate people with a rifle, that's just some really bad luck. Jose Gonzalez was a member of a street gang, the Lot Stoners 13, that was a rival of the Lopez Maravilla gang. He had Lot 13 tattooed on his neck, and at least by the time of the trial, also on the back of his head. The prosecution presented 2 kinds of evidence that defendant was a gunman, eyewitnesses identification that were, with one exception, repeated at the trial. Evidence also suggested at trial that the defendant told a fellow gang member that he was the shooter. So Jose Gonzalez was bragging about it. Juan Rocha identified he was one of the guys hanging out with all his friends. basically he identified him. He said, yep, Jose Gonzalez was the shooter at us. He had previously selected Jose Gonzalez's photograph from a photographic lineup, and then Jose Gonzalez himself from a live lineup. Horacio Jimenez, also a guy who was there at scene, one of the 7 individuals hanging out, selected Jose Gonzalez's picture out of a photographic lineup, and then also identified him in a live lineup as well. At the live lineup, he said he was 100% sure of Jose Gonzalez's identification. He did not identify anyone at the preliminary hearing or at the trial. At the preliminary hearing, he said that he was, quote, terrified and therefore would not identify anyone in court. At trial, he said that Jose Gonzalez was not the gunman. That's crazy. But he also said that he did not know what the gunman looked like. So this is where eyewitness testimony always comes into play, and why a lot of defense attorneys can chew them up and spit them out, because someone can change their mind, someone can forget, someone can be scared, someone can be coerced either way, and a good defense attorney knows that, and a good defense attorney is going to be able to pick this apart. He said he had selected Jose Gonzalez's photograph because everyone was saying it was number 2, which was Jose Gonzalez. And he had identified Jose Gonzalez at the live lineup because Jose Gonzalez had a gang tattoo on the back of his head. Mario Jimenez selected Jose Gonzalez's photograph from a photographic lineup as, quote, looking the most like the guy with the gun. At trial, he identified no one as the gunman. He said he had lied when he selected Jose Gonzalez's photograph as looking like the gunman, and he had done so only because of what others had told him, similar to what the guy Mario Jimenez had said, right? Or what Horacio Jimenez had said. He could not remember who these others were. When he selected the photograph, he told police that he had not spoken to anyone about the photograph. So basically, when he first looked at it, when he first identified Jose Gonzalez, Mario Jimenez says, yep, that's him. Nope, I haven't talked to anybody about it. That's him. By the time trial rolls around, and this is why defense attorneys push things out, this is why sometimes time is these people who go on trial, these defendants' best friend. People forget. People get scared. People get intimidated. People die. This is why. So then by the time Mario Jimenez gets to trial, he goes, nope, don't know it was him. Actually, I know what I said at the time of the lineup, but no, by this time he's saying, hey, man, everyone had just said it was him, so I just went with that. So, yeah. And then basically all these other gang members that were there, like Jose Gutierrez, he did select him in the lineup, but again said he's the one that looks most like the gunman. And then he identified him also in the live lineup. He wrote, yep, 100% that's him. But at trial, he said, I did not get a good look at the gunman. And he did not identify anyone else. And same thing. I identified Jose Gonzalez because of rumors and what everybody else had said. So that's 1, 2, 3 out of the 4 who are saying, hey, man, you know what? I really don't know. I'm not even sure. That's crazy, man. So that is kind of crazy what can be construed. Okay, but going on, though. The police seized a .223 caliber Armorite rifle from under a house in Los Angeles. Evidence indicated that the Lot Stoners 13 gang used the house to store weapons. Ballistic analysis established that the 2 bullet casings that the police recovered from in front of the Jimenez residence after the shooting came from that rifle. At the time of the shooting, none of the 7 men who were at the Jimenez house were members of a gang. Sometime after he identified Jose Gonzalez as at the live lineup and before he testified at trial, Gutierrez became a member of the Lopez Matavilla gang. Gutierrez testified that the Lopez Matavilla gang and the Lot Stoner 13 gang do not get along. This is where things are crazy, because it's like, okay, well, if none of them were gang members, then why did Jose Gonzalez shoot him up? Is it because he thought they were? I don't know. And then one of the guys who was there at the time, who now they're saying wasn't a gang member, but then he became a gang member. This is where all this stuff gets construed. And again, this is why people who get convicted, this is why they file appeals. This is why things go through the appeal process and go through the court process again. This is honestly probably how he got his death sentence. Why when they got to the penalty phase, they said, wait a minute, okay, you got enough to convict him barely? After reading through this, I'm like, I don't even know how you could convict him. Okay, they convicted him, but we're not going to sentence him to death. A sergeant by the name of Al Garcia testified as an expert on street gangs in East LA. The gangs are concerned about their turf, the areas in which they are located. The Lot Stoners 13 gang and the Lopez Montevilla gang claimed turfs that were divided by a common street. The two gangs were, quote, bitter enemies that often assaulted each other. In gang culture, it was bad to, quote, be a rat or a snitch, someone who assisted law enforcement as a witness or as an informant. Sergeant Garcia testified that such persons are often intimidated not to testify. It does not matter whether a person provides information against a fellow gang member or a rival gang member. Either way, the person is considered to be assisting law enforcement and might be intimidated. Sergeant Garcia also testified that in his experience, a member of the Lot Stoners 13 gang would not falsely tell police that a fellow Lot Stoner 13 gang member had committed a crime. That's crazy, man. So I don't know. Honestly, you read that and you're more confused. You go, okay, so how was Jose Gonzalez actually convicted? Because they found a gun under a house that was tied to the Lot Stoners 13 gang. They didn't even have his physical evidence on the gun. I mean, that's crazy. And then you have majority of the witnesses who were there out of the 7, majority of them went back on their word of initially identifying him. That's actually kind of scary, the way sometimes our court process works. And the Lot Stoners 13, to give a little background on them, the Lot Stoners, or Vadio Lot 13, is predominantly a Hispanic street gang from the East LA section of Los Angeles. They came out during the stoner era of the 70s when the Hispanic street socialization was centered around parties, drinking, and doing lightweight narcotics. They got their name from a large hillside lot in the neighborhood of City Terrace. They eventually transformed into a traditional street gang, already having rivalries with El Hoyo Montevilla, High Times Montevilla, and Gage Montevilla, which were all previously stoner groups. Their turf occupies the area near and around Brannock and Blanchard Streets. Formed a second neighborhood in the Montebello East LA area and a third neighborhood in Huntington Park. They also have several cliques from the Vadio, including the Chicos, Locos, and Tiny Insane Criminals. That's nuts. Okay, last guy we got good information on, Eric Servin, one of our alleged attackers. This is an article from September 17th, 2017, from LA. A man who was fatally shot in Glazell Park over the weekend was identified Wednesday by police, who said the alleged killer was hospitalized in critical condition and facing a possible murder charge. The shooting occurred about 12:10 a.m. Sunday in the 3300 block of Drew Street, according to the Los Angeles Police Department. Raul Borja, I put his picture up for you guys, 29 of LA, died at a hospital about an hour later, said coroner's assistant Chief Ed Winter. Eric Servin, who was 30 at the time, was wounded during the shooting and was hospitalized in critical condition, according to police, who released no details about the circumstances of the crime. A homicide detective said he could only confirm that Servin was booked on suspicion of murder. Absolutely crazy case. I am going to say this. I really tried not to be biased or dramatic in any way. But our victim in this case, Nick Lopez, 100% got what he deserved. And that is karma. That is what comes around. He stabbed and murdered his victim, Tanya Manaka, to death. And sometime later, he himself was stabbed to death. And I just think that's how it goes, man. Anyway, much love, much appreciation. Until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.